Hey there, everybody. Pastor Jeff Doria here, and I am going to begin a series on Martin Luther and the Reformation for you, my confirmation students, and anyone else who wants to learn a little bit more about Martin Luther and that specific time period of our history about 500 years ago. So you will need your handouts, and those are on our website. And so the worksheet that you fill in, it looks like this. This is the first page, and then there's the other sheets, the other packet that I've written up, and you'll want to use that as well just to go through this. So, but this video is going to be supplementary to that, and I'm going to hit on things that are not in those printed lessons. So this video is going to give you other information as well. It'll still cover some of it that's in there, but I'm going to bring you some other information as well. So without further ado, let's dive in. Please know that I'm going to be using images from the Luther movie, and it came out back in 2003. It's a good movie. It's a good film regarding high quality acting. Got a few famous actors and actresses in there, but also it has a lot of good history in it. There were certain scenes that were actually filmed on site in Germany. There's some neat documentaries about this movie. So if you ever want to check it out, I encourage you to check out some of the documentary and things. But nevertheless, some of the images you're going to see in my slideshow here are going to be connected to that movie or from that movie. And that way, as I'm talking about them here and you're seeing them in this little presentation, when you go and watch the movie, hopefully it'll make a little more sense because you already have some background. All right. So we're going to dive in with Luther and the Reformation. And so, but first I want you to realize something, because the magnitude of what we're looking at. All right. What I have here is this Life Millennium. It's a nice hardbound book. It was printed. It was put out, at the turn of the millennium back in 2000, and you could still order these today. That you can find them online. And anyway, it includes the top 100 events and the top 100 people of the previous 1,000 years. Okay, the previous millennium. And so you'll be looking at, you're going to look at different things, and it can be like example the number 60, okay, number 60 of the top events of the previous 1,000 years, according to this company, was the flushing toilet. All right, now that's pretty cool, right? I mean, but that's number 60. So imagine some of the things that have been done outside of that. So, for example, Orville and Wilbur Wright, that comes in at number 27 of their list. Okay, so of all the most important events in the previous 1,000 years, that came in at number 27. Then Walking on the Moon comes in at 33. So a pretty awesome event, right? But it's still only number 33 from these people's perspective on how it impacted our lives and the culture in which we live. So it's important to know where Luther and the Reformation stood in its importance and impact. And you're going to be really surprised, because Martin Luther is the number 3 guy in his impact in this list over the previous 1,000 years. Number 3. And then the Reformation that event is number 3 as well. And so that is what's amazing, is that Martin Luther is the 3rd most influential person of the previous 1,000 years. Let that sink in for a minute, because a lot of times we just kind of think, well, he's just some guy that lived 500 years ago, and he caused a ruckus in the Catholic Church or something like that. That might be all we know about it, but there's so much more. So not only was Luther number 3 according to the Life Millennium, Time Life magazine and such, but also the Reformation was the 3rd most influential event in the previous 1,000 years. So just those two facts, just letting that kind of sink in, that's crazy. Some of the other people, like, you might be wondering, well, who was number 1 and number 2? Well, number 1 was Thomas Edison. inventor of light bulb, electricity, and all that stuff. That was obviously amazing. And then number two, according to these guys, was Christopher Columbus, right? And so his discovery, and there's a lot of stuff that goes on in our culture today about how horrible Columbus was, but there's also a lot of stuff that demonstrate how amazing the events and his discoveries were. So those are the top one and two people. But Martin Luther comes in at number three. It's pretty cool to know that he comes in ahead of people like, well, all the kings, all emperors. He comes ahead of all of them. Galileo was 4. Leonardo da Vinci was 5. Charles Darwin, number 9. Even Albert Einstein, as brilliant as Albert Einstein was and his great impact, he's listed as number 21. So just letting that sink in, just kind of a little precursor to our dive into Luther, was to help you understand the importance and impact Luther had, as well as the Reformation. Now you might be wondering, what were the top few events? Okay, I already explained to you the top few people, but some of the top few events. Well, number one was Gutenberg's printing press. Okay, and that his printing of the Bible back in 1455. This is just, and you guys remember Gutenberg's printing press had just begun and was enacted and was kind of cranking things out when Luther started his writings. And so the combination of Luther and that printing press and Luther's writings and that ability to print spread his works like wildfire, kind of like what we have in the internet today. The printing press was that day and age's internet. Okay, just mass-produced pieces of information. So Gutenberg's printing of the Bible was the number one impact that the Life Millennium, the people in the Life magazine, they are saying. Then the number two was Columbus's voyage. So you still got Columbus in both ways at number two, and of course Luther comes in at 3. So hopefully you guys have an idea of the magnitude that Luther has, the impact of him and the Reformation, and so that sets the stage for what we're about to dive into. All right. Okay. So looking at his, the information with Luther and some of the things that I want you to know, that however you view him, whether you're Lutheran or, there's people who are Methodists, and there are people who are Baptists, and lots of people in Christian faith recognize one important fact, and that is God used Martin Luther as a hero of the church. Now the Roman Catholics don't think so. Luther was kicked out of the church, but the people who were not Roman Catholic, they recognize Luther as a hero, that he was able to bring back the truth of the gospel of Jesus Christ front and center in regarding our Christian faith. And so we're going to be diving into how that played out. All right. So I also want you to know not to confuse Dr. Martin Luther, who lived 500 years ago, and Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., okay, who lived and was killed, just 50, 70 years ago. And so he lived in the early, 1900s. And so he was major, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was a major civil rights leader, the main spokesperson. Don't confuse the two, okay? They lived 500 years apart. One was a white German monk, and the other guy was a black American Baptist minister, okay? So don't confuse the two. But it is interesting to know about their names. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. that wasn't his original name. His dad had learned about Martin Luther, the Reformation Martin Luther, okay, so the guy 500 years ago, he learned about him, valued his contributions to the church, to the faith, and what that father did was he renamed his son. He renamed his son to be Martin Luther King Jr. And then, of course, he went on to get his doctorate, and so he became Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. So it's cool to know that the great civil rights leader of the 1950s, 40s, and 50s was named after Dr. Martin Luther, the Reformation hero. Okay, so that's a pretty cool thing. So, but just don't confuse the two when you're talking about them. All right, so the early years of Luther, well, he was born in 1482. All right, 1482. Now, you may know a contemporary of Luther at that time. He was a number 2 guy on the list of the Time Life Millennium book, and that was Columbus. So we know Columbus, Luther, these guys lived as contemporaries. I mean, they didn't live in the same spot, but they lived at the same time in regards to our history. So, born in 1482, he lived in Germany. Okay, that's where you have the most stuff of Luther happening, was in Germany. His parents were Hans and Margaret, good German names there. And Hans worked in the copper mines. So he was a blue collar worker. He worked hard. Copper mines were dangerous, filthy, and uh, and you didn't need a lot of education to do that. And so that was something that Hans really wanted his son, and Margaret too. They both wanted their son to do well in school. And so one of the things that regarding Luther's life here is that parents wanted him to become a lawyer. That was the ideal wish of his parents. They wanted him to be educated, be a lawyer, make something of yourself. Don't follow in my footsteps, Hans was thinking. Don't be working like this, but do something much better and be educated. Well, Luther was good at academics. He was a great student regarding the scholarly work. So growing up, he was really good. The problem was he was so smart that he got bored. He got bored real easy, and so he got himself in trouble a lot too. So if you're a student and you get yourself in trouble, maybe just kind of think to yourself, well, I'm not much different than Martin Luther. That is, if you're making really good grades as well. He loved the music, and he was great in music, and all that good stuff. So I'm not going to get into a lot of details on Luther's education. Just know that he was a great student. He ended up earning a bachelor's degree, got a master's degree. So there was a lot there. He continued on his education, and then when he was off and he was studying, he was decided, well, he just didn't like it, and he was really struggling with his faith. He was struggling with um, going to be a lawyer. He wanted to do it, but after 2 months of studying to be a lawyer, my understanding is that he left and was heading back home. And this is somewhat legendary, and where some people will debate on the actual event of this lightning storm, but the storm that changed Luther's life was was it's told that he's on his way back home from studying law, and he just didn't think he was cut out for that. He gets caught in the storm, and he's afraid for his life. There's lightning around, the rain is pouring, and he's crying out, "Help me, Saint Anne! Help me, Saint Anne!" He's praying to the saints, because that's what the Catholics did, and he prays that if he was spared, he'd become a monk. Okay, so if God spared him, then he would dedicate his life and become a monk. Well, he's 21 years old when this is happening, and so then you find that Luther is his life is going to change drastically in a way that his parents weren't too happy about. He enters the monastery, the Augustinian monastery, and he's about 21 years old. When he goes, his parents are not happy about it. Again, they wanted him to be a lawyer. They wanted him to be well educated, such. And Dad was really ticked off about this decision. Did not like it at all. Martin thought, though, because he was so troubled, he just had a lot of trouble in his heart and his mind. He was confused about things. He thought he'd find peace with God. And a lot of it had to do with the fact that he knew he was a sinful man. He knew he was struggling with his own desires and thoughts and his speech, and he just knew that it needed God's help. And he could never find peace with that, even with the understanding of the Catholic faith. And so what he ended up doing was entering this monastery thinking he'd find peace with God. Well, at the monastery, he didn't. What he found was confusion. He was perplexed. He was disoriented, bewildered. He felt lost. He was majorly uh, messed up, you might say. And his hopes was to find this great peace, find this great sense of understanding of God and of his own life, and where life would make more sense. And it didn't. And so he's at the monastery and he's struggling tremendously. So maybe you are that way as well. Maybe you are thinking to yourself, man, eighth grade, or however old you are at this stage that you're actually watching this video, that you're just trying to figure out life, and things are really confusing. Maybe you have a lot of fear of the future. And then you could be on the flip side of it. You could be, at eighth grade thinking, you pretty much got a great handle on life. I can remember thinking that. I remember being in eighth grade, playing soccer, standing out there on the soccer field. I was a goalie, and my team was pretty good. So I remember specifically one game in Southwest Houston, playing at the Meadows area. I'm standing there in goal and just thinking about life because I didn't have much action that day. And I just remember thinking, okay, I'm going to remember this time in this point in time in my life, because I really think I've got a good handle on life. I think I really understand things in life. I was in eighth grade. I didn't have a clue about so much, but in my mind, I really did. I thought I did. I was pretty convinced I knew a lot. I'm much older than that now, and history teaches you a lot, and you learn a lot. So if you're in eighth grade, or if you're even in high school, whatever, just know that no matter whether you feel really cocky, how you think you really know about life, or you're really unclear about things, I promise you, as you get older and as you continue to learn and as you live life and as you move out, you have work experience and you continue your education and whatever it might be, maybe going to the military or what, you're going to grow. You're going to grow so much mentally, physically. You're going to grow in your wisdom. You're going to have tremendous life experiences. You're going to be on a roller coaster of a ride, the good and the bad, and all the while, God is with you. That's why we know God is Emmanuel. God is with us. And so that's what Luther will come to know. He'll come to learn that. But we're going to save that for the next video. Okay, so I'm going to wrap it up here. Leaving Luther in his confusion at the monastery, and we'll pick it up in the next video. Until then, God bless you, and I'll talk to you then. Bye-bye.